on. I thought it was on, but evidently may not be.
Good afternoon, Ryan. Are we supposed to do a sound check? This is Miss Hatcher.
It's optional. Some folks feel more comfortable making sure we do that, but we
Okay.
can hear you, Joyce.
All right, thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Can we do a quick sound check for everybody?
Check. I can hear you, sir.
Okay, let me just go around the room. This is just in the order I see on my screen. So let's see. Bonnie.
Here.
Okay. Franklin.
Here.
Sarah.
Hi.
Andre.
Here.
Okay. Anne. And you might be on mute. Okay, we'll come back to Anne. Carrie.
Hello.
Okay. Eva.
Here.
Okay. Dr. Moore.
Here.
Okay. And let's see, Patrick.
Here, thank you.
Okay. Rhonda.
Good afternoon.
Excellent. Let's see. I see Miss Hatcher on. Are you here?
I am here. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Dr. Felder. I see her on. I know she was going to join a little bit later.
I believe she stepped away for a minute.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah, we did a sound and video check with her before she went to her other meeting. She should be good to go.
All right, thanks, Ryan.
Will, can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you, Ann. We can hear you.
Good.
So just a couple of reminders for everybody. One is, since this is a virtual meeting, we will, on any action items, we will have to do a roll call vote. So I'll just call each person to confirm the votes. And the second is, if you have a question or want to speak, please raise your hand. If you look at the bottom of your meeting, yep, Honey's got it. You can just raise your hand there and we'll just go around and give everybody a chance. I won't be able to see everybody's video at the same time. So if for some reason I'm not calling on you or don't see it, please just speak up. Anyway, just those couple of things, since we are in a virtual meeting and we haven't done that in a while.
Well, I can't seem to get a picture, but I'm here.
Okay, it's not a problem. All right, are we live, Ryan?
Yes, sir. You're ready and ready to go.
Okay. All right. I'll call this meeting to order. The Orange County Board of Education pledges to its citizens to conduct its business in a courteous and productive manner, showing respect for fellow board members, staff, and its citizens. The board asks its citizens to conduct themselves in the same courteous towards both school personnel and each other. As board policy, Robert's Rule of Order will be used to conduct the meeting, and a moment of silence will be observed before each meeting. At this time, we'll observe a moment of silence. All right. So the first item on the agenda is the agenda adoption. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved. This is Sarah.
Okay, Sarah. Do we have a second?
Second, Carrie.
Okay, thank you, Carrie. All right. Okay, with that, Ann,
Yes, sir.
okay, Carrie,
Yes.
Bonnie,
Yes.
Dr. Moore,
Yes.
Andre,
Yes.
okay, Sarah,
Yes.
and chair votes yes. All right, our first agenda item is to review last year to this year's calendar that was adopted and options. So I believe in Assembly, we do have posted the approved calendar, and there were the options of all the other days and possibilities. With that, Patrick, are you leading this discussion to start, or would you like the board to just start discussion?
I think it's okay if the board wants to just jump right in. I will give you just an update. I know the board had discussed looking at this as an agenda item tonight. I did reach back out to the county today, and I do not have any additional updates on the VIII building for next year. So as you're discussing this agenda topic, just do understand we do not have confirmation for the building for next year. We're still working with them as they work with all their departments and agencies and planning boards, zoning boards, et cetera, on their calendars for next year. So I was not able to get any feedback if there would be a particular day over another. We do know the Board of County Commissioners meets on Thursday, but I don't have any additional feedback to be able to guide the board as to availability of the VIII Center on the other days. So I would just, as you move forward, just keep in mind days may need to be adjusted based on availability. or we look at an alternate space.
All right, thank you so much. I see Sarah with her hand up. Go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, just a clarification. I'm looking at the county commissioner calendar right now, and it looks like their regular meeting date is Tuesday. They do have a few Thursdays in there, but I just wanted to make sure we were clear on what day they regularly meet.
Thank you for that.
All right, other board members? All right, it looks like Bonnie, you had your hand up first, and then Carrie.
I thought Carrie was first. Go ahead, Carrie. I thought she was first. Go ahead.
I was just going to say,
Regards to Thursday, which seemed like one of the other viable options we were talking about previously. I just wanted to note for people who may not have a copy of the Thursday calendar that the dates are literally the same except shifting for Wednesday to Thursday with the exception of September. Since switching from Wednesday the 28th to the Thursday the 29th conflicts with our joint BOCC and school board meeting. And so for that month, the suggested dates for Thursday were Thursday the 8th and 22nd from the calendar that the staff put together when we were considering different days.
Okay. All right, Bonnie.
Yeah, and I just wanted to reframe this because it's been a little bit, but as I understand it, Orange County School Board has met on Mondays for a very long time. I don't remember it ever being anything else. And we talked about changing it. And part of the issue is the challenges that staff had in preparing materials for the Monday meeting. Since we made this decision, I've gotten feedback from the community that Wednesday is not a good night. And there's lots of other competing things that go on in the community. Bible study probably tops the list, but if you want to do something on a Wednesday, it's hard to get people to do that. And so makes you wonder if there's a way to go back to Monday and if there's a way to figure out how we can alleviate the burden on the staff because they should not be working every weekend to prepare for a board meeting. So just how I'm understanding what we're trying to decide here.
All right, others?
When does the board get their board packets for the board meeting? Is it still on Thursday or Friday prior to a Monday meeting?
Yes.
Okay. And how do we get them?
Electronically. You'll get it electronically
Okay.
through Simply.
Okay, good.
Sarah?
yeah, in the earlier discussion that we had about this, one of the other days we talked about was Thursdays. And it looks like there might be in the next couple of months, like 1 or 2 potential conflicts with BOCC type events. Carrie mentioned the joint meeting. But I'd be in favor of us looking at that, just knowing as much as staff want to prepare things further in advance and have worked to get out of a cycle, that the reality is it's partially the preparation and it's partially just sort of like holding the stress of the upcoming board meeting over the weekend. I'd be in favor of having it later in the week on a Thursday personally.
Thank you, Sarah. Ann?
Just a thought, moving it to a Wednesday or a Thursday, does that interfere with things that are going on in schools that we might be invited to or want to attend? Just knowing from sporting events to banquets for athletics or things that plays, so forth, that happen in a school, they don't typically happen on a Monday night. They happen later in the week. And just curious is if that would be something that we needed to consider if we were going to visit schools and partake in these events.
That's a great question. And I know in the last discussion, that is the point I had brought up because I went back and looked at all the events I attended and the majority of them were on Thursday nights. Thursday night is probably the most popular night for chorus, band, and others for having that. I mean, there are things like, events that are done, theater that are multiple days, but a lot of the one-time things are done on the Thursday. It's a great point. Andy, you still have a question? Oh, okay.
No.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, I'll share. I do have concerns as well as a Thursday or Wednesday, just because of the events in the district. And I definitely want the load taken off of our district for preparing for these meetings, even if it means us doing agendas way earlier and allowing them time to do that. For me as well, it is difficult throughout the week to do a meeting on other days, but it's just how I feel. Is for me, Monday is a better day. Hey, Dr. Felder.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. And so, hi.
Welcome home.
Thank you so much. It's great to be home. And so if you wouldn't mind, I would just like to chime in, and I certainly appreciate the conversation and discussion. And I know that there's really no one absolute perfect day, but I will say, to your point, Mr. Atherton, even when we have, sometimes we are planned for the month, meaning we pretty much know what's coming down the pike. Having the meetings on Monday still presents a major challenge for staff for the reason that Mrs. Smiley mentioned, and that is just the stress. And we know that we want all staff to want to promote for all staff a better work-life balance. It really is stressful and impacts their weekend, which is often the only downtime, if any, that they have. For me personally, we could meet on Saturday. I don't have a preference, but I will advocate for the staff because I see what they do and I know the impact that it has on them. And so I just wanted to put that forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Felder. Andre?
Yes, how much time are we allowed to give the staff in advance to prepare for these board meetings?
There's not a defined time. I mean, it could be 2 weeks. I know that Chapel Hill gets their board packet a week and a half in advance.
But if I could add, it's not just the board packet. It is the whole presentation. 20 minutes takes hours upon hours to prepare for. And so.
Carrie?
Yeah, I just personally would like to respect the staff request to not have it on Mondays. And I don't see Thursdays as much of a conflict as, we've been invited to sports banquets on Mondays and my kids have band concerts on Wednesdays. I mean, I don't see Thursdays personally as being a particular conflict. Other school districts have board meetings on Thursdays in the area. To me, it makes sense to move meetings to a night other than Monday.
All right. Any other discussion? Bonnie? Looks like you're on mute. You're on mute, Bonnie.
It bothers, whether it's the weekend or the Wednesday, I should be off. Am I off now?
You are. We can hear you.
So it bothers, okay. It bothers me if the staff is spending days getting ready for a board meeting when they have a school district to manage. And I think we have to fix that. I think we've got to find a way that it's easier eyes on what's going on and what's important. So we have to fix that. And I am on the side that Mondays has been a really good night, a good reliable night for school meeting. And it's been a reliable night for the community for school meetings. And changing that feels like it's a little bit of a hardship. And again, the goal here is not to ruin everybody's weekend, but we've got to, is that what's broken? Is we have to figure out a way to do the planning and presentation for the meetings more effectively. And so can we do both? Can we do both? And if it doesn't work, can we go back and revisit in a couple months and say, you know what, we really do have to change this because we as a board cannot figure out a way to alleviate our burden on the staff. Because if the board is ruining the weekend of the district staff, then we have a problem. We have a problem.
Dr. Felder?
Yes, I appreciate what you shared, Ms. Hauser. The board isn't ruining the weekend of the staff. It's just the nature of the work. It doesn't matter what district you're in. Staff have to present. We have to provide information, and we're happy to do that. It's just the impact that it has, again, on staff with regards to their weekend, which is often the only time that they are finding some balance. And so, but I appreciate your comments.
Yeah, messes up my weekend too. I'll be completely honest with you. It does. It really messes up my weekend. But it has to do with timing. I'm sorry, Anne. I'll let others speak.
All right, Anne?
Have they given any specifics as to what might take the longest, or is it just the mental preparedness that they need to go through to get ready for this?
Thank you for that question, Mrs. Purcell. It's everything. It's not one thing. It's all of it. It is the preparation, and it is a preparation in terms of, the presentation. It's designing the presentation. It's every aspect of what you see at a board meeting. But the same is true as for teachers, right? In terms of planning a lesson, a 15-minute lesson can take hours to prepare for. And so it's not one thing, it is the whole thing. And again, I don't see a way around that. This is just the nature of the work when it comes to presentations. But if we can spare our staff and give them more quality of life on the weekends, I would strongly ask you all to consider that.
I was just curious because if we had already gotten the information, to me, it's going through it, preparing what you're going to say and how you're going to say it. That's why I asked that question. I was just curious.
Bonnie?
Yeah, I just add one other thing, and that's it's, to me, what would only be worse is to cut into the school's time from the district. So if the district staff is spending time during the week on getting ready for the board, what about the schools? Because I really would like the board to be done and let the school's business continue on. So it's just where my preference is.
Sarah?
Clarifying point. Bonnie, I don't think you meant this, but are you saying, you're not saying you'd rather have folks prepare for the board meeting on the weekend so that it doesn't cut into the school's time? Are you?
I'm saying that there's 24 hours in a day, and if the people are spending all their time, if they're taking days of time to get ready for a board meeting, and we move the board meeting to Thursday, that means that's time the district staff won't be able to spend working with our schools. So that's my concern is, where's the time coming from? It's not like we can make up time, right? You with me?
Dr. Felder?
I didn't know if Mrs. Smiley had anything in addition to say. I didn't want to cut her off.
No, thank you.
And so where's the time coming from? Typically, evenings, we're not typically working on board presentations during the day because we're doing just what you said, Ms. Hauser, we're supporting schools. We're doing the work of the district. Often it's evenings, weekends, and such that we are getting at it. We come together on the day of to dry run, but that's all built into a weekly meeting we have anyway. We just build that into the agenda. But typically that's where that work is getting done.
Dr. Moore?
Okay, thank you. I was just going to say that I am in support of our staff. If we could look at changing the day of the meeting, if it's, I guess, to just prevent burnout, and just to give them some time in between. So whichever day you all decide on, then that's what I'll go with. But I do support them.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. Sarah?
Yeah, I do want to affirm the idea that I think it's important to really streamline the amount of time staff are spending on preparing for board meetings. That seems really essential. And so regardless of what day it falls on, if it were to fall on a Thursday, I think the pressure would be there even more to make sure that that was true if the few days ahead of it were weekdays, which may be, Bonnie, what you were saying with your point there. But yeah, I mean, I'm still in favor of Thursdays because I think what we heard previously, what we haven't talked about as much today, is the sort of mental, the inability of staff to sort of let go of preparing for the board meeting with it coming up over the course of a weekend when it is on a Monday, and the ability to change that sort of dynamic feels important to me.
All right, Bonnie?
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. That's exactly right. I mean, I think the problem with this discussion is we're moving the lawn chairs around, moving the pieces around, but we're not fundamentally changing the amount of work people are doing. You know, and I'm hearing that the issue is not just stress over the weekend, it's the amount of work people are actually doing, preparing for the board meeting. And we know it's happening, and we know we're getting the presentations usually an hour or two before the meeting. So we've got to figure out, so moving the meeting kind of shifts, it moves the problem, but it doesn't really solve the problem. And so how to, the change in the meeting, there's a question about how much disruption does that, and just say, I am also in support of the staff and not creating a unnecessary burden or stress on the staff. But there's consequences of all of it, and meetings have always been on Monday. It's worked pretty well. But we've got to figure out how to make this less work, how to make supporting the board less of a burden on the staff. And that's the problem I'd love us to spend time on.
Anne?
I was just wondering if the staff had given Dr. Felder any indication about if it was left on Monday, what would help them to make it smoother and easier for them. And I know we talked about going ahead and planning and getting everything to them, but still it's that stress of we're presenting and we have to be there. But I didn't know whether anyone had spoken to her about what would actually make it better if it was left on a Monday.
And so to your question, and thank you for asking that question, Mrs. Purcell, we did not talk about what would make it better if it were left on a Monday. What the staff have said is that really emphasized was moving it from Mondays. And I appreciate everything you're saying. And if there are ways that we can tweak and refine the process a little bit more, that may be helpful, but ultimately they need time. They need time. And yes, we can get the abstracts and assembly to the board as we have before the weekend, as the board is requested, but then we have to take what's in assembly and bring it to life in form of a presentation. And as I said, we're not doing that work during the day, typically. Typically, we are focused on supporting schools and the work that we're doing in support of schools. And so having the additional time would be helpful. And to the points that were mentioned previously, it is extremely, it's a constant mental battle over the weekend. And it impacts our weekend. And so it's just very, very stressful. That's all I can tell you. And the staff continue, we had another discussion about it just today. We had a discussion about it yesterday. We were meeting. And the stress is real. And yes, people are burnt out and tired and ground down and worn out. And if this will help support our staff, again, I will continue to advocate for it, for the staff.
Hi, I did want to mention that staff has previously mentioned that it was stressful for them to prepare for meetings on Monday. So this isn't a something new. They had mentioned this months ago about it being stressful for them. So I don't know what we can do to help them, but they're asking for help. So this is not a new item that's been mentioned, or a new concern that's been mentioned.
Bonnie?
So is it possible, you know, in the spirit of moving the agenda packet up, is it possible to move to a schedule that looks like agenda packet gets released a week early and the presentation is ready the Friday before? So that the staff, it's got to be, so if the board said, we really would like to see the presentation before the meeting, and we'd like to see it Friday, and then the staff's got to be done with it on Friday, and they can relax over the weekend and not worry about it. Is that possible to make deadlines like that?
So moving the packet up will create another source of stress. I don't know that that will help to address the issue, but I appreciate the suggestion.
Other thoughts? Bonnie?
Just a question is, in terms of publishing the meeting calendar and getting it set up, is it critical that it be done tonight so that we can get the Whitted room set? I mean, it feels like we've really got to make this decision, right? Is that correct?
It does. We have to request it from the county. The district needs to plan, and all of us need to block our calendars appropriately so we have this known.
Yeah. Yeah, it feels to me that whether it's Monday or Wednesday or Friday, that it's the same amount of work. And we've got to figure out a way to make less work. And, you know, and I, you know, just in my own experience, changing that when something has to be ready changes what you do is that anxiety that we're doing over the weekend. Now you could move it to Wednesday and Thursday and have the report ready on Friday. You know, it's been done. It can work. You know, I'll let Dr. Felder speak, but I would like to make a motion that we move the meetings to Monday and with an attempt to reduce the impact on the staff with a calendar schedule. And if it doesn't work, then we're going to have to do a revisit.
And so I'll just close. I won't continue. I think you all are very clear on the advocacy that I'm making on behalf of staff. No,
Yeah.
it doesn't change the date, the amount of work, but it does change how people live on the weekend. It does have an impact there. So I can assure you of that. And if you want to, staff are panelists and can chime in, but it will impact and give our staff who are working very, very hard an opportunity to breathe, enjoy their family, have a better quality of life on the weekend.
Thank you, Dr. Felder. So we do have a motion from Bonnie. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a second from Andre. Any further discussion? Carrie?
Just want to say I strongly disagree with moving the meetings back to Monday.
Thank you, Carrie. Anyone else? All right, Bonnie,
Yes.
Dr. Moore,
No,
Andre,
Yes.
Sarah,
No.
Anne,
Yes.
Carrie,
No.
and chair votes yes, motion passes to moving calendar to Mondays. All right, thanks everyone for that good discussion. And I definitely would like us to work with you, Dr. Felder, on how we can help reduce and other options we can do. The next agenda item is the staffing update for 2020-2023 school year.
Okay, and so I'd like to invite Ms. Joyce Hatcher, Chief of Human Capital. She will lead this discussion. So Ms. Hatcher.
Good evening. Thank you, Dr. Felder, for the introduction. Board Chair, Mr. Averton, and congratulations on your appointment. Board members and our new board members, Ms. Purcell and Mr. Richmond, welcome, and thank you all for this opportunity. And Dr. Felder, thank you all for this opportunity to just provide you with an update on our staffing data. Also, I have asked Ms. Bremer to join me on the call since we have worked collaboratively on some of the data that we will be sharing with you this evening. Next slide. So all of the work here in human capital is linked to our strategic plan and our equity plan, which has a focus on recruitment retention of highly qualified staff, as well as also ensuring that we have a diverse staff that represents the student population here at the district. Next slide. So on this evening, we will be talking about attrition rates will be the next thing that Ms. Bremer will bring to you. But before we get into our discussion, I just want to give you a tidbit of information that you will have as you kind of walk through this data with us. I want to let you know that all of our schools, that was not me, all of our schools have received, and when I mean schools, all of our principals have received their allotments. They received those allotments in early April, and those allotments were revised in May. So all positions have been allotted for based on enrollment according to the state class allotment. So I want you all to have that information and keep that information in your minds as you are walking through this presentation. At this time, I'm going to ask Ms. Bremer to walk us through the OCS attrition rates. And the reasons why I've asked her to join, because a lot of the attrition rates she has worked with, and she does have historical knowledge around those attrition rates. So I'm going to turn the presentation over to her right now, and she'll cover that information. Ms. Bremer, if you'll go ahead.
So good evening, Board of Education. I am so happy to be here with you tonight to contribute to the staffing updates. So the first slide you see here are our state attrition rates. And so once a year, I prepare what's called the teacher turnover report. And the teacher turnover report feeds into NCDPI, and once a year they publish what's called the State of Schools report. And you can see both our in particular data, but also the state data in regards to turnover. So one thing to know about the teacher turnover report, it is done a year in the rear. So I'm about to complete the current teacher turnover report that will tell you the staff that left between March of 2021 and then from March to 2022. The way the state calculates attrition is it looks at people who are teachers who are on the payroll of March of 2020, but not on the payroll of March to 2021. This is teachers. It does not include support staff or principals. That's a totally separate category. So these are folks that the state would consider that are coded by budget as teachers. So as you can see, these are the attrition rates. And by the way, let me say that usually we get these earlier, but the state board did a lot of modifications because they were trying to calculate how COVID has played into attrition rates. So you can see these are our attrition rates for, again, folks who were on the payroll in March of 2020, but not in 2021. And I'm going to go over to the next slide, please, to show you secondary rates. And if you go over to the next slide, you can see that this slide, you can, I'm sorry, go back up one. You can see the secondary rates. At the bottom, you can see the LEA attrition, and then you can also compare it to our state attrition rates. You can see places that and you can also see the 3-year average. If you note in all of these, 2019, 2020, significantly higher, that was the year we had impacts from COVID. So again, these are our state attrition rates. Next slide.
Thank you, Ms. Bremer. So now we're going to we will look at our certified turnover rate, or our turnover data. This data is from May 7th, 2021 to current. This data will reflect, this is our resignation data, and we put retirement in here in this presentation because retirement is a form of a resignation. And we have broken this down by school. We do apologize, we did not put it in alphabetical order. We had some formatting issues. We will work on that next time, but every school is included in this report. And as you can see, from May 7, 2021 to current, we had a total of 197 persons that left our district. Now you're probably wondering, Ms. Hatcher, what reasons did they give for leaving? And I'm glad you all asked. So I'm going to ask us to excel to the next slide, and I can share that information with you. So here we have indicated the data reasons for why folks left. And when I say cited is because each employee, when they did make a decision to leave our district, they complete what's called a district voluntary termination form. And this is what we have. This is the information we have here. This does not reflect anyone that we per se had to help them leave for maybe a performance or some sort of situation like that. But these here, this data here is individuals that when they completed or decided to leave our district, this is what they noted on their resignation, their district resignation form. I also want to point out that we do have, when they receive or request the district resignation form, there is also what is called, we have an exit survey that they can complete. It is not mandatory. Sometimes individuals complete it, sometimes they do not, but we do have that mechanism put in place. We also have a situation where if employees call and say, I would like to sit down and meet with someone, we do offer that as well. But I do want to bring your attention to the top 4 reasons why folk left the district. The first reason was to teach in another school district. The second reason was retirement, family responsibility, and the 4th reason was other. As you can see the list as the list goes on. But I did want to share those reasons why individuals cited reasons for why individuals have chosen to leave our district. Next slide. Now, at this point, we're going to change channels a little bit. And because if you know someone leaves, that creates what's called a vacancy. So now we're going to be talking about job vacancies. And so now we're going to go to the next slide. So before we get down to our vacancies, we also have positions that are just hard to fill. And I want to note this too, as you all are walking through this presentation with you, I gave you information. I talked about allotments. I also want you to know that from year to year, and I've only been here to be 1 year next month, and it's been shared with me that the district has never began a school year fully staffed. So sometimes positions are carried over from 1 year to the next. So I want you to note that as well. But these are some areas as of today, July 17th, is that the date? Yes, no, July 18th. These are our hard to fill positions that we have right now that we're having difficulty recruiting for, and we're being very transparent. We have 3 Spanish, as you can see here, 5 middle grades math, 3 middle grade science, 2 high school math, 1 high school science, 8 exceptional children's teachers position, 3 school nurses, 2 high school CTE, and 12 support staff. So those are our hard to fill categories that we have as of today. Next slide. Now I'm going to turn it back over to Ms. Bremer, and she's going to walk us through this data as it relates to our current certified vacancies. And please keep in mind, we're only talking about teacher vacancies. Ms. Bremer.
So this chart breaks down our vacancies by elementary, middle, and high. Please know that district vacancies are not listed here. So we have total about 52.7 vacancies in our schools, and you can see the breakdown. 23 classroom core teachers. When I say classroom core teachers, I mean math, science, social studies, history, social studies, science, with ELA, sorry, and then also elementary ed. Exceptional children's teacher, that would include both general or adaptive, those are in inclusion or self-contained classrooms. Non-core classroom teachers are your elective teachers, your CTE, your foreign language, folks who actually teach kids, but I don't consider them a core subject. School administrators are your APs and principals, and the support staff is anyone such as your coach or media specialists who are not on a fixed schedule, but they support our students. And so you can see that breakdown by school level and where our vacancies lie. So right now we have 52.7 total. Last year at the same time in July, I believe we had around 32. So we are running a little high on that area. I will say to you that where we saw the biggest peak in vacancies was on the 40th day. And on the 40th day, we had about 48 vacancies last year. So there was that peak after school started. Next slide. So I also pulled vacancy data by week, and I really wanted to correspond this because you can see if we started in the beginning of June, which is typically when your resignations start, our vacancies have come down quite a bit. And I really want to correspond this and thank the board for the change that you made in the supplements, the salary schedule, because I can see a significant difference in intaking people since that has happened, not only in the fact that our vacancies have started to decline, but also in the years of experience and which folks are coming with, because now we are having more people come that are not in that beginning 0 to 6 years. We are beginning to see it up in more with teachers with more experience. But so thank you for that. But those are our vacancies over the week, and I will continue to add to that as the weeks go on. The one area I did want to point out that has been the hardest to move has been our exceptional children's teacher. It has stayed pretty stable throughout the weeks. And we still, we've made a little progress, but we have not made significant progress in our EC teaching population. Next slide.
So we're at the point where we want to talk about what are our strategies and what are we going to do and what have we done. So the recruitment and hard to fill vacant strategies. And again, I want to echo Ms. Bremer in thanking the board for the sign-on bonuses that we were able to implement. These were implemented prior to my arrival, and I'm very glad that we will continue these this year. And we had sign-on bonuses for nurses, CTE, EC, math, science. So sign-on bonuses in those hard to fill areas. While the bus drivers do have a referral program, we do not have a referral program per se where people get paid. But when we recruit a good person, we're often asking them, do you have a friend that would love to come and work with you, work with us? So we have done that and we have found that to be very successful. I do want to give a shout out to our new Chief Communications Officer, Kevin Smith. He and I have been working collaboratively since he started, along with technology, in working on some branding and marketing presence on social media outlets. And I'll just name a few. Everyone knows Twitter, Facebook, but he did share something with me. It is called Bentley. It's not the car, but it is a system where it enables us to shorten a link. So when we use this, we're able to say, when you go to Orange County Schools, instead of putting in the whole orangecountyschools.com and then hitting careers, you just say Orange County Schools hire. And it takes you straight to Teacher Match and takes you straight to our job board. He also has helped me to hopefully by next week get a presence on LinkedIn so that people can go on LinkedIn. And if those of you who are members of LinkedIn, you know that it's a very good tool where people see you, you see them. But the way we would have LinkedIn set up is that once you go to LinkedIn, it would lead you back to our website where our jobs are posted. Also, too, we talked about some quick wins since he's been here. And some of the things we have done that have been quick wins is that I have encouraged principals to put their openings out on their marquees at their schools. Here in Human Capital, we have put messages on our voicemail to say and direct people to go to our website and join our team. So those are some things that we are doing, but I am very glad you all will begin to see more of a presence of us on our webpage, where we are putting and advertising our positions out there on our webpage. I also want to echo Mrs. Bremer's thank you again for the passing of the supplement increase. That has helped us tremendously. We have been able to recruit folks from other surrounding districts, and they call and they say, hey, I received a recommendation. Can you share with me what your supplement is? And when I share that, oh, your supplement is higher than what I'll be receiving. And as a result, they're calling that principal and saying, hey, I want to come on board. We will continue our HBCU recruitment efforts. That was something that I continued, that was already started when I got here. I will continue to do that. We are already starting to receive requests from universities and colleges for fall job fairs. So we are already doing that. Also too, want to talk about our substitutes. They play a big role in this, and they have been really helpful throughout the pandemic, just to kind of help us keep things afloat. We also have been able to, and will continue this school year, affording schools the ability to have a long-term sub, 2 long-term subs in their schools. So, and when talking about our substitute data, just want to kind of throw this in here. The 21-22 school year, we had 98 active substitutes. We reach out at the end of each school year, kind of surveying the substitutes to find out if they are returning. Right now, we have heard from 61 of those 98 substitutes. We are still looking and hoping to recruit more. So if any of you have friends who would like to come and join us and be a substitute, we would gladly welcome them to come. If they are newly retired, they have to work 6 months, but we would gladly take them on our team to help us with our efforts in our schools. Retention efforts, and thank you all again for approving a couple of board meetings ago, the new teacher support program. That is going to be huge regarding just keeping non-beginning teachers and giving them that support they need to get them over that hump through that first through third year, which is the most research tells us is the most critical years of teaching. I did mention the local supplement, and then we're partnering with educational organizations, and I will go ahead and, I wasn't going to name it, but I am going to name it. We are partnering with Teach for America and working with them. We have heard that in our partnership with them, there are teachers that are coming from outside of the states that want, when I mean outside of North Carolina, let me be clear, and want to come into North Carolina and work with us. I have had experience working with Teach for America in other districts, and it can be a very successful program. And then just with our unfilled vacancies, we're going to continue, because recruiting just does not stop when school starts. It's a continuous process. We want to be able to have a pool of staff that when we have an opening, we're not scrambling, and we have a pool of folk that we can go to, and then continue to utilize our long-term subs. So these are just a few of the recruitment strategies that we have in place, that we will continue to have in place to reduce that number of vacancies that you all seen on the earlier slide. Next slide. At this point, this concludes our presentation. We again want to thank you for the opportunity to bring this information to you. And at this time, we will answer any questions that you may have.
All right, board questions, Sarah?
Great. Thank you both so much for this update. It's just really good to have a sense of where we are. And I'm really glad that the supplement change has been helpful. And I'm glad that you're going to be doing some work on improving our social media presence and things like that. I would just name like our website as like a very low hanging fruit here that I would prioritize as quickly as possible. So like that the change to the supplement is not updated on the website. So it still says it's based on years of experience in Orange County. And I don't think that we're doing the best job of selling ourselves well. Like if you go to like Durham, right? And you go and it's like, here's 7 reasons to work in Durham public schools. And it's very flashy and exciting. And if we go to the human capital page for us, the top of the page is the org charts. It's not like the first thing you hit is like, come work here. Here's all these great reasons. You actually kind of have to dig a bit to get that information. So I saw on the front page of the whole website, the like, come be a bus driver with us. And that's awesome. We have got to these like top priority positions, the signing bonuses, like we just on Orange County Schools website, we just have to make it so much clearer. So I know that Mr. Smith like just started, but we gotta make some improvements there, I think.
Ms. Smiley, thank you so much for that. And I did fail to mention, based on your feedback, and I knew I needed to meet with him quickly. So we are working on that. But one of the things that we have that we did get, and Ms. Brimmer can speak to this as well, we were able to get, and we want to do testimonials as to why work for OCS. We had 3 testimonials ready from beginning teachers that we're going to release. So I heard you loud and clear, Ms. Smiley. If I could get it out there, I would. Mr. Smith is away, but I met with him last week and I'm going, what can we do? Because I knew you were going to say that, but I heard you. So, and I appreciate the feedback that you're giving. So yes, we heard you. I don't know, Ms. Brimmer, you want to chime in about the beginning teacher testimonials, but we are working on that. And we want our website to look better than our competitors. So thank you for the question and the feedback.
So one of the things that we are working on is at the printers. We have a lovely new brochure about beginning teacher support, and with the testimonials and with the changes in our program. So once we get it back from the printer, one of the strategies we've talked about a lot is we can't wait for people to come to us. We have to come to them. And so like providing some literature in doctor's offices, in the Chamber of Commerce, and having any and other places that people go to have information that can capture audiences perhaps that that are not looking at our website, right? Because you're looking at it, in my opinion, you're looking at our website if you're interested in a job with us. But how do we capture people, which is we need to make sure that we have all that information there, but we also need to make sure we're getting it to people who are not necessarily looking at us. And so ways to do that captures people who haven't thought about us yet and aren't necessarily jumping on, to see what we're offering, but rather going to them. I think the LinkedIn page will be an awesome thing when we get that done, because we can go in and target people and say, hey, did you know Orange County's offering this? And yeah.
And to Ms. Bremer's point, and I won't belabor this, Mr. Smith and I have scheduled a meeting to go down and meet with the folks at the Chamber of Commerce. We would like to leave some marketing information with them. Number one, on just our schools. And then also in that same packet, putting information on how to work for our schools. So those are just some things that he and I, in addition to, are going to be working on.
All right, other questions or comments? Bonnie?
Yeah, I have just, first, just a couple questions on the numbers. You showed 197, we lost 197 people. Was that this year? And that's just teachers, right? There's no sports coaches in there, no classified staff, that's just teachers?
197 licensed staff. So that can include teachers, it can also include support staff.
And what would that be in a percentage basis, just to compare to the other years roughly?
So we have let me say this. So we have roughly about, we carry roughly about anywhere 550, 560 certified staff. I can tell you how many we hired last year and how many we have already went through and vetted this year. If you give me just 1 second.
It's substantially higher. Yes, that.
Yeah, well, it won't be as high as the whole year, but if I look at where we were last year this time, yeah, it's definitely higher.
Bill, can I just ask a quick clarifying question on this data?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, Bonnie, I don't mean to interrupt, but I just want to make sure that I understand. I think that said since May 2021. So not this past May, but it's everybody from last May. So presumably we then hired back people this year, right?
Correct.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I was talking about the 197 on the next page, on the subsequent page, which was presented as a number, not as a percent.
Yes, that's the one that I meant, Bonnie, where I was just clarifying. That's from May 2021, not from May 2022.
That is correct.
Right.
That's from before last school year started.
Right. And I think Connie's saying that if we use the entire school year, it would actually be even higher. That we've lost a lot of people.
So last year, so right now we have vetted and hired 78 certified employees. Last year, during the course of the year, the whole year, we vetted and hired 148 certified employees.
Okay. Right. And so, I am not for a second going. So I asked this question in the spirit of appreciating your job and how hard it is and how much work you are doing to keep bringing on staff in probably the most difficult employment environment we've seen. So I just wanted a little clarity on that. I noticed that there were some fairly substantial disparities school by school. And I wonder if we have any insight into that. Some schools had lost a lot more people than others.
I don't know if I have any insight per se, but I can tell you that there's definitely been more turnover at some schools. I would say that all schools have been higher than they normally are. But then there has been some that have been much higher than normal.
I have some other questions. I'll hold them.
All right, Sarah?
Yeah, just one more thought on the recruitment stuff, which is I really, I think it's great, like talking to the chamber about all the different jobs and stuff. The place where I personally feel the most urgency is like the core classroom teachers and how we are communicating clearly like all of the benefits that work here, of working here for them. And I don't know, I know we're doing some things with ed schools, but it just seems if we have one pagers about all the advantages of working in Orange County schools, I just hope we're doing a lot on that front. Are we communicating, are we leveraging our own teachers to fill these positions? So like when I've spoken with teachers in the district, like newer teachers in the district, like how did you hear about, how did you decide to come to Orange County schools? Very often they were drawn by a peer, right? If they were somebody coming from another district. So what, if anything, are we doing right now to leverage our teachers to bring in teachers?
Well, at this point, Ms. Smiley, as I mentioned in the presentation, we are thanking them and we're utilizing swag, but we don't have, unlike the bus drivers, there is a employee referral compensation piece, kind of like a bonus attached to the bus drivers. We don't have an employee referral piece for those people who bring in someone. So, when they do bring that person in, we're doing little things, but we don't have like a referral program that has, if you refer 6 people or if you refer 2 people and they stay 6 months, you get $50. We don't have anything like that. If that's what you're asking.
So one thing that's exciting is that we so the state is switching applicant tracking systems. And so when we go to the new applicant tracking system, it is going to allow us to collect data about our candidate pools. And so and we can customize that. So one of the data points is a referral piece. It's how did you hear about us? And employee referral is one of those. It also will allow us to capture candidate pools. So we can look at candidate pools. Of course, demographic information for potential candidates is optional. They don't have to fill it out. However, if what's for the information we are capturing, we're going to be able to run reports and know what our candidate pools are looking like, which I think is really exciting.
Yeah, that is really, really exciting, like promising for the long term. And I think I'm just feeling the like summer crunch of school's going to start, as I'm sure you all are too. You're feeling the same thing, I know, but just if there's anything else that we can do right now to leverage do our staff members know about what our vacancies are, or how should we be offering referral bonuses for hard to fill teaching positions? It feels like that's a promising place to consider.
So Ms. Smiley, were you asking if that would help if we offered that? Are you looking for an answer to that question? I just want to.
No, I guess not an answer right now. What I want to express is my sense of like urgency around like making sure that we have enough middle school math teachers or EC teachers or whatever. And what are we doing right now so that we can be fully staffed at the start of the school year, this school year, in addition to sort of longer term improvements.
All right. Other questions or comments from board members? Sarah?
Sorry, I do have one more. I mean, others, feel free to raise your hands. Mine was, we didn't talk about exceptional children's TAs, but I saw that on the last board vacancy report that there were a lot of ECTA positions open. Do we have any differential pay or bonuses or anything different for those positions? I know we've discussed it, I think in budget, but I can't remember where that landed.
To answer your question, Ms. Smiley, for purposes of this report, and I can provide information later send you other information, but for purposes of the question that we received, We only address teaching positions, but I have no problem with sharing teacher assistant data with you. Also too, and I'm not sure if Ms. Graff is on this call and can hear me, I do know regarding the exceptional children's TA, they were also captured in that classified salary study we did when we did that back with the Hill group, if I'm correct, Ms. Rath. So they were captured there.
You are correct.
So to answer your question, that's the starting point we did, because as you all remember, we did collapse scales, salary scales, and collapse those scales to try to make things better for our classified staff. But we do not have a problem with if we need to share data regarding our classified staff. We can share that in a board weekly update, or we can send that information out. But for purposes of this particular assignment, we only focused on the teachers, but we do have the data.
Oh, sure. Yeah, no, that's great. And and I saw it in the weekly vacancies. It popped out to me, the like exceptional children TAs in particular, as there being these like a number of vacancies, and wondering if we need to do anything differently for recruiting or retaining those positions too. Presenting it as a question, not something to immediately answer necessarily.
So Sarah, the only thing I wanted to add in from the budget committee is we did have a discussion if there should be a different supplement or scale, and that's one of the items that was going to come back to the board as part of the recommendation around that. But currently, classified was addressed as all classified, not any single group. It was everybody was increased, but it is one of the items on the list of the budget of, is this something to do to help distinguish those hard positions?
Yeah, thanks, Will. Yeah, I couldn't remember if we'd already decided to make a change there, or if that was in the broader set of ways that we could use whatever budget we might have this year. Thanks.
Sure. Bonnie?
Yeah, so that's, first of all, I just want to do a +1 on the referral bonus. I think it would be really nice to get people to talk positively about coming to work for Orange County Schools. So that's, I'd be very interested in hearing that. I'm also interested in, and also looking at the way that the teacher supplement helped to look at other aspects of our supplement. We really have to change it to be competitive. There's also questions about structurally, are there certain structural characteristics of our schools? If you looked at the numbers, it's clear that the Title I elementary schools have higher turnover than the others. It's clear that, a couple of the others, one of the high schools, one of the middle schools also have some difficult numbers, and don't know if it's anything to do with the student population, the allotments. Do we need an extra behavioral interventionist? Do we need extra administrators? I don't know what the answer is, but should we be looking at the staffing for that school in order to deal with the unique characteristics of its population and teaching staff? There's also, so those are the structural things, but then there's what I think of as the whisper campaigns, and if you look at the working conditions survey, it wasn't complimentary in terms of the trust and the, how people feel about our schools. Also, some disparities between schools, and so we know. I think someone said this earlier. We know that teachers talk to each other, and they are recruiting for other districts, and we want our teachers recruiting for ours. And so, and we've talked about, I'm actually really happy we're having this conversation in open session, because you can't really have it in closed session. But it's hard to get, when teachers call you and say, I'm having problems, it is very hard to get people to speak critically about people they like, people they work with. It's just hard to get people to really speak about it, but they vote with their feet. They walk out the door. And so so how do we get to the whisper campaigns? How do we get to the real attitudes that people have? And how do we do it in a way that people feel that we're listening? We know we know this is important, and we want Orange County Schools to be the place to work. So I mentioned this, I know, in closed session. I'd like to open it in open session of, should we consider hiring a consulting firm, an independent consultant, not anyone, not us, and working for the board. So it's not filtered through the district or staff or anything like that, but for the board, working for the board and Dr. Felder to actually talk to people that have left and find out why they left. And so I would be really interested in that. I don't know if other board members, how you feel about that, but I want to really find out what it is that people love about this place and what is it that we really have to take a look at. Because we all love it.
Other comments, questions?
Okay.
Let's see, Carrie?
We talked about at the June 27th meeting, when we voted to make teacher supplements based on years of service, including outside of Orange County schools. We talked about raising the lowest tier in their supplement percent. And so I'm just curious, what is our time frame for making those changes? Are we waiting till August?
So Carrie, if you can hold that question till the next part under the budget is
Okay.
where we'll discuss the percentages, because that's a very valuable question and it feeds into this just like you're asking.
Okay.
Dr. Felder?
Thank you, Mr. Atherton. I just wanted to comment on Ms. Hauser's recommendation. I certainly wouldn't be opposed to that. Of course, any way that we can get additional information that will help us to make improvements, certainly open and would welcome that.
I would be open to it as well. I know we've done a little bit with the equity report, and I think expanding on that, and if we can get better insight to improve, I think it's a good idea. See, Bonnie?
So could I make a motion to hire an independent consultant to conduct an anonymous interviews of people who have left, and the consultant would report to the board in partnership with Dr. Felder?
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second, Will.
Okay, that's Ann. Okay, discussion. I see Sarah, your hand's open.
Yeah, I mean, I just, the idea of reporting to the board is sort of strange to me. I haven't really heard of that before. And like without knowing, this is, I don't know, it's just coming up very quick, all of this. And I don't quite understand. It seems like something we'd want to have more of a discussion of, more of an understanding of how this fits into broader budget. Yeah, I'm not opposed to the idea. I just, it seems very quick to be making a decision like this.
All right, Eva?
Thank you. I just wanted to note that obviously we don't know how much this is going to cost. And so I wondered if you would prefer to have the action be to instruct the administration to seek proposals and bring the best one back for board approval, because we don't know, we don't have a dollar figure. So it's up to you, but that is one suggestion.
Okay, so Bonnie, a friendly amendment?
Yeah, so I just, oh, I guess I don't have to raise my hand. I just have a couple of questions. I guess I thought in the past, Eva, and I think particularly with respect to our attorney, that in fact the attorney, that Tharrington Smith has retained consultants for the board in the past. So I thought that was some practice that we've done. But I think what I think is important with this, first of all, and I agree with you that we don't know, and there's a real question. This, I mean, we could interview 10 people, we can interview 100 people, we can interview more than that. It could be a real disparity in the fee. And I wondered if it's possible to get get a couple of consultants and have them talk to each board member and Dr. Felder and maybe Ms. Hatcher to get the questions that we'd like them to see if they could ferret out and come back to us with a proposal. But would we be able, and I don't know, it might cost us a little bit, you know, would firms be willing to do that, to talk to us, understand, unless people are doing this all the time, you know, it's important work. I'm surprised more districts are not doing it. So.
All right, so it looks like the next person is Jennifer, and Dr. Felder, you have your hand up. Would you, Dr. Felder, would you like to speak before Dr. Moore? Or okay,
No.
Dr. Moore?
I guess this is more, I guess, of a comment more so than a question, but so we currently have the exit interview in place. And sometimes a lot of people, they are not answering the exit review questions. So I'm wondering, I guess, the pros and cons of having someone from an outside agency. I mean, I don't know if people would, they may feel reluctant to answer the questions. They're already not answering the questions in the exit interview. So it's just more or less my, I guess, more of a concern or a comment.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. Dr. Felder?
Thank you, Mr. Atherton. I just wanted to, just wondering with regards to cost, I do think that's something that should certainly be considered, and wondering if an RFP process would be the most efficient way to go. But again, I do wonder about the cost. And so I wanted to mention that. And then I didn't know how Barrington Smith has supported the board previously, and wondered if that was for legal purposes in matters such as this.
Eva, did you want to answer that before we go to the next board member?
I'm not sure what that was in reference to, as far as Barrington Smith retaining consultants for HR purposes.
So I believe Bonnie's referring to when we brought in an external consultant to help with an investigation inside the school. I believe that's the context, is what I think it is.
Okay, that makes sense. So as far as, I think the question of an RFP, certainly it's not something that has to be bid. And I think I was just, but often you do seek proposals. And I think my question was just, does the board want to instruct the administration to go forth and hire someone, or to bring back to the board the best proposals that it gets for the board to make the decision? And I assume this is something that would not cross the threshold of the superintendent's authority, but I don't know.
All right, Carrie?
Yeah, I would like to know more about the cost. I know, to make a comparison to the equity audit, we got several, RFPs. That wasn't a decision we made without those first. So I would be uncomfortable supporting going ahead and hiring someone without knowing the cost tonight.
I agree with that, by the way. Bonnie?
Yeah, I agree completely that we need to get the costs on the, to Jennifer's point on the exit interviews, people, and we've had this, I've begged people to speak to Dr. Felder, to Ms. Hatcher. People are really hesitant to speak within the organization for all kinds of reasons, including their kids are still in school here. They still have family members that work for us. There's all kinds of reasons that they don't want to do this, which is why it's so important that this is, would have to be an anonymous survey, that there would have to be assurances that you would not be identified, and there'd have to be protections. But there's important things that people have to say that I think we have to hear. They may say, the board's a bunch of wackadoos, we need to do something about the school board. I'm kidding, but we just want to let them speak freely and see if we can get them to express their concerns in a way that is constructive for us to hear.
So with that, Bonnie, are you and Ann amenable to update your motion to get bids in the form of RFP?
That's okay with me. I have a question about scope because I just I don't know what the consultants would look like, who would be talking to them about the scope, and also, and maybe that's just something we'd have to ask them to propose on, how would they provide assurances to participants? How would they identify participants? And what questions would they be seeking to answer? So I don't know if they have to talk to us, but in order to, what does that RFP process look like? But I'm open to share. So the answer is yes, just don't know what it looks like.
Okay, let's see, it shows Sarah, then Dr. Felder.
Thanks. I have a question and a thought. The question is around timeline of this and relative priority against the other things that we're doing starting the school year. I would be more inclined to do this a little bit further down the road, given everything that staff is focused on right now and getting started for school. And then the other is, I personally am a fan of empowering Ms. Hatcher and the Human Capital Department to scope this out, with our blessings, right? That this is something that would be valuable for strengthening our recruitment and retention efforts, to have her, to answer these questions about how do you scope the RFP and all of those things. Like, I think that's a role that she and her team could play in really defining what that should look like, what's needed, and sort of be the point person. I think that's, I haven't heard of a lot of things like this where it would go directly to the board. It feels much more like a tool for the management of the district, which is more on the line of the administration rather than the board. So I'd be a fan of, Ms. Hatcher leading, figuring this out, all of these kinds of questions we have about timeline and RFP, and then, and then we can all learn from what we learn from it.
Thank you, Sarah. Dr. Felder?
Thank you, Mr. Atherton, and thank you, Mrs. Smiley, for your comments. I was going to say the same thing. There's no way that we don't have the bandwidth to start this process now, given, I don't want to be repetitive, but Mrs. Smiley, your comments were spot on. So just wanted to bring that up. And with regards to, love to get the information, but the timeline or time frame for doing that, this would not be it.
All right, Bonnie?
Yeah, so in general, just so you know, I in many conversations that I've had with people, they're really hesitant for whatever reasons to talk within the district. And so I really do think it has to be independent and anonymous. And I'm happy to let Ms. Hatcher talk to the board and get questions and help with the RFP process, but I don't think this should burden the staff at all. Ms. Hatcher, I worry about her time, but hopefully that could be done relatively quickly, but I don't think this is a staff project. I don't think, this is about talking to people who've left the district and finding out why they left. It's not they left to go to another job, but why? What is it? Did they Was it the commute, or was it they just couldn't work in the building? You know, that's what I'm trying to get to. And is there something that we're doing? We just need more teachers and or more people in some of our schools, you know, our allotment's too tight. I just would like to hear that. And for some reason, that's not coming up through channels, and they're not doing the exit interviews, and they're not providing the feedback. So, but they're leaving. So I just would like to let them speak anonymously to someone without fear of retaliation, without fear of they're never going to be welcome in our buildings again, you know, and maybe hopes that they might come back at some time. But so that's where I am.
All right. Let me just recap what I've heard from everyone. The interest is the RFP to be driven by Ms. Hatcher and to talk with each board member about any specific questions or things they would like to see in this. Of course, being anonymous to whoever they're talking to gather that information and to bring back to the board some cost options around doing this type of work. So we can see, one, how much it will cost, and then if there's multiple options around that. Have I missed anything around the discussion?
Mr. Atherton, thank you. If I could, I would just also throw in some review by Ms. Dubison, just to ensure that we are not violating any grievance policies or such. And so I think we have to keep that in mind. And then I would wonder from Ms. Hatcher and Ms. Brimmer, what is the percentage of staff who complete an exit interview? I believe they have those data. I don't know if they have it at the moment, but it would be interesting to know what that is. And not only by way of the exit interview, but other ways that staff convey to the district their reason for leaving.
I'm sorry, Dr. Feller, we have that data. We don't have it right. We don't have it tonight, but I can get it. We can get it to you by the end of the week.
I can tell you that we have I think it's a little more than 60 folks that have completed it since probably the fall of this past year.
So that's about less than a third. Are we allowed to see those? I would really like, are we allowed to see those?
So those are personnel records. So it's something where, yes, I think board members could review them for, you know, if you had a board related purpose, which obviously you would, but certainly they can also be compiled or anonymized to limit any concerns about, you know, just sort of accessing personnel records. But yes, you can review them. I think with regard to having a third party gathering that information, I would just like to note that things like promising anonymity and what we're going to do with the information would have to be on the understanding that that's to the extent permitted by law. Because if someone reports something that we have to follow up on, then we have to follow up on that. And I know that's not the kind of stuff that you're trying to get at necessarily. But I would just raise that it's, you know, it will be as anonymous as we could possibly legally make it.
And Dr. Felder, let me just be clear. I do know that Ms. Brimmer shared roughly about 60. That's rough data. I do want to give you and make sure that we scrub that data. So we'll make sure that you get it by the end of the week so that it is accurate data. Not saying that it's not, but I just want to make sure we scrub it.
All right. Just trying to keep us moving. So I'm going to just go back to Bonnie and Ann about modifying your motion to be an RFP that's anonymous with Ms. Hatcher to work with the board members to get the questions reviewed by Eva and to be anonymous within the extent of the law.
That's fine with me.
Ann?
Yes, that's fine with me.
All right. So other discussions around this with the new modified, Sarah?
Just understand the hope for timeline here and what we're aiming for. I think part of my vote hinges on whether we're gonna do a reasonable timeline on this, given everything that staff have going on.
Yeah, I didn't hear anyone say they wanted this like tomorrow or other comments from boards on timing of this. I was thinking that would be part of the RFP process. Ann?
I think that the comments that have been made about we're trying to open school right now. I think this data would be very important, and it would be possibly helping us down the road. But I also understand what it's like to open a school year, and I think that if we can say within the next certain amount of time, and I'm not going to throw that out. I'm going to let somebody else works closely with opening the school, particularly in HR, say that what would be a good time to start this process would be. But I do understand that we are in the throes of opening school, hiring teachers, hiring assistants, and that needs to take priority over this important information that we're trying to gather. But I think it does need to be done.
Dr. Felder?
Yes, Mr. Atherton, I would recommend no sooner than late fall.
All right.
Is that for the RFP or is that for the engagement to be completed?
That would be to begin the process of an RFP.
I don't know. You know, the only question that I have is there a benefit to having people know we are starting this, that it's something, you know, we have the working condition survey, we have lots of information about the culture, and would it help in our recruiting and retention for people to know that we're looking at this seriously? So late fall to start it, that means by the end of next year. You know, the truth is we're probably 3 or 4 months too late to have it completed. So I don't know. And you know more about starting schools. You know, I'm gonna let, I don't know what to say. I think we're too late. Late fall to start it means we're talking about having it done by the end of the year. It's feels like a long time to me.
Ms. Hatcher?
Thank you, Mr. Atherton. I just wanted to make a comment. While I have no problem working on the RFP process, there is a state process around RFPs. So I would just note that I would need the support of the persons, and it would probably be Ms. Raff, maybe Mr. Aberley regarding procurement processes. I know Ms. Duberson will be helping us, but I just want to make certain that we're not putting, and I'm not doing anything that would put us in any jeopardy or any legal harm, because I have done an RFP process, but it's very intense, it's very detailed, it's very time consuming from the standpoint that are very driven deadlines. And if you do that incorrectly, it can throw off your whole process. So I just want to note that.
Dr. Felder?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Atherton. So to your point, Ms. Hauser, I think we would control the time frame by way of the RFP, right? So if the expectation is that we have the data by sometime in the winter timeframe, then that would be one of the expectations in the RFP. That I think it's too late to get that information to impact the work we're trying to do now, but it certainly will impact the work going forward. And so we would need it in a timely fashion. But an RFP process is very labor intensive. And so again, we don't have the bandwidth to start that process any sooner than early fall.
All right, so you're saying before the, like late fall to me is before Thanksgiving, would we be able to have a process and going, a vendor identified and selected, and then launch a project? Is that what you're proposing as a timetable?
Well, I'm thinking in that time frame, we should be able to start the RFP process, have all that laid out, begin getting proposals. Just the process, I think it takes anywhere from six weeks, about 6 weeks for an RFP process, somewhere in there. It just depends. It depends on how many bids we get. Sometimes you don't get enough. You have to redo it. So that remains to be seen. I can just tell you, it would be a stretch, and again, a hardship on staff to do it any sooner. So
yeah, I hear you.
So please hear me on that. Thank you.
Yes, Eva?
I just wanted to note that as a service contract, this would not be subject to formal bidding rules. So we could set the timeline that we would allow the windows to be open. But that said, you still want it to be long enough for word to get out and for, to get some good proposals.
All right. Bonnie, is your hand still up to comment or just?
Yeah, no,
Okay,
new
go ahead.
comment. So I just wanted to say, I get it. And opening schools is a much higher priority than this. It's really important for different reasons, but I think we have to get our schools open and get things going. So I'm open to wait. I also wonder if, and I don't know if Darrington Smith can help, but if we should consider an RFI process where we identify companies that do this kind of work and let them come to us with a proposed scope and approach on this, because certainly we're not the only district that's asking these questions. I just don't know, and we could look around, but I'm open to certainly let's get schools open and shoot for having this moving.
If it's the pleasure of the board, based on all the questions and discussion, maybe the suggestion could be that we have Ms. Hatcher and Dr. Felder come back with the timing and how it's going to be done and when. And that way we're not trying to build it here, if you will. I think we've all agreed we do not want to interfere with the opening of schools. So I think given that would allow our district to figure those things out and bring back a timing proposal. And then that way we have in front of us those questions. It gives Ms. Duvison some time to look at it and make any comments or suggestions around it as well, at the high level, not here's the questions and here's how we're going to do it, but the timing at least. And that way everybody's comfortable in knowing when to expect the activity. If it's the pleasure of the board, just a recommendation.
That's fine with me. That makes sense.
And
I think that makes sense. And it's, if we're going to do something, we want to do it right and do it where we're going to get the most bang for our buck, which we're probably going to be paying several $1,000s for this. So I would say that to do this and do it right, we need to take it a little bit slower and go ahead and get school started and get that off the plate of HR, and then we can hopefully all work together on this.
all right, with that, any other comments before we go through a vote? I see your hand still up, Bonnie.
I know, I'm having a technical problem here. It's ignore it.
Okay, thank you. All right, with that, I'll start with Dr. Moore.
Yes.
Okay. Andre,
Yes.
Sarah?
So this vote is for staff to come back with that plan. Is
Yes.
that what we're voting? Yes, okay, yes.
Yes. Okay, Anne,
Yes.
Carrie,
Yes.
Bonnie,
Yes.
and chair votes yes as well. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, everybody, for the great discussion, and we will move to the next agenda item, budget update.
Hi, good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here and see you all tonight, and we'll jump right in and having a discussion about our budget and what we know at this time. Next slide, please. So, to bring everyone up to where we are currently, we went to the county commissioners and asked for funding for the upcoming school year. We went through a process with the commissioners, and they approved in late June to provide us a per pupil of $4,808, which equates to $38.6 million that we will receive from Orange County for the upcoming school year. Of that $38.6 million, we had a continuation budget of $35.4 million. That was to continue operating the district as we currently are. We know that there was a biennium budget that had a 2.5% increase for our certified staff as well as for our classified staff. And at that time, we knew our benefit increases. Those items, when factored in, would require an $1.1 million over our continuation budget for all of our staff that are funded locally. We now have a revised budget that was signed by the governor, which provided classified staff with a 4% increase, our certified staff an average of 4.2% increase, and our benefits increased again. In particular, retirement went from 24.19% to 24.5%. So basically, for every dollar for our staff that are eligible to pay into the retirement system, Orange County Schools has to contribute 24.5%. Those items, when costed with the increase in the most recent budget, it is projected that that will take an additional $500,000. So it is currently anticipated that we will need $1.6 million to implement the raises and the increases that are in the final budget bill for staff that are on our local budget. We implemented a 3.5% step increase for our classified staff to decompress the classified scales. And we also implemented an additional supplement for child nutrition and placing the child nutrition staff on this scale, and that was $631,500. At the last board meeting, it was approved for us to adjust the years of service credit for our certified staff previously in Orange County Schools. If you were a certified staff member and you came into this district, you only received years of service credit for supplement based upon your years of service in Orange County Schools. So what that means, if we had a veteran teacher who had 14 years of experience as a teacher and came to work at Orange County Schools, you would be placed on the supplement scale for 0 to 5 years of experience. That action is anticipated to cost $651,000. So of the items that I've just discussed that are in blue, those have been committed, and we are going forward with those. So that leaves us with $275,717 of the increase that we received from our commissioners that has yet to be allocated. That will be allocated prior to adopting the final budget for the 22-23 school year. But at this time, there's only $275,717 of our local budget that is not allocated. Next slide, please. An update on fund balance. So fund balance is calculated at year end, and even though our fiscal year end has ended, we haven't physically closed year end and what that means is we are still receiving invoices and payment requests for items that are applicable to the 21-22 school year. So when we began the 21-22 school year, we had an audited fund balance of 6.6 million. Through board appropriations and board action, 4.2 million of that was assigned and appropriated. That left 2.4 million of available unassigned fund balance. So when we begin projecting where we anticipate coming in for this June 30th, we start with our June 30th of 21 balance, which was 6.6 million. And we take a look at our actual revenue that came into the district compared to our actual expenses that we paid out. So looking at what actually came in that we received in our per pupil appropriation, as well as any fines and forfeitures that we received, because those are our only funding sources for our local revenue, looking at what we have already spent out and what we are projected that is going to continue to come in until our auditors return, we are going to spend an estimated $1.7 million more than we received revenue for. So that 1.7 million is going to have to come out of fund balance because we have to have a balanced budget. So as a result, I am projecting that the June 30th of 22 fund balance will be 4.9 million. I hope I didn't muddy the waters here, but the next piece of the puzzle is there are appropriations that were made that have yet to be spent. For example, we still have some school renaming items that are going to be happening. We also have fund balance that was appropriated for the iPad leases, and we have 2 more years on those leases. We also have the letters training that fund balance was appropriated for, that we will not be seeing those expenditures hit until next school year. And also fund balance was appropriated for the Sportsplex memberships. Those items equate to 1.3 million. So when we look at the projected balance of at June 30th of 4.9 million, subtract out what has already been appropriated that will remain appropriated going forward of 1.3 million, that leaves us a projected available fund balance for the 22-23 school year of 3.7 million. Next slide. Some things that we are concerned about or have our antennas up for is the increase in operational costs. One that, as you are familiar with, are fuel costs. We actually had an additional fund balance appropriation at the very last board meeting as a result of these increased costs. We are currently anticipating that it's going to run us approximately $60,000 a week at the start of school to run our school buses, compared to roughly $30,000 the last school year. We also are anticipating an increase in our custodial contracted services as well as our custodial supplies of approximately 20% or roughly $360,000. We also are currently anticipating costs in our food, as all of us are experiencing when we go to the grocery store, of I think a conservative estimate is 15% or 200,000. And then we also know that our utility costs are on the rise. The most important thing I think I want to add here is that even though these costs are things that have materialized at the end of our budget cycle after we were going to commissioners and asking for funding, we have no indication at this time that our state funding nor our federal funding will be increased to offset the increases associated with fuel or food cost. Other things to keep in mind is we also are watching. I do not know the full extent yet, but we are anticipating that our federal reimbursements are going to be less. We did not increase our meal prices for the 22-23 school year. And again, we have no additional funding resources. So with that, keep in mind that we have the $275,000 that is still available from the increase that we got from commissioners or either fund balance to offset the costs associated with these items. Next slide. It was, the question was posed about some potential budget strategies that we could look at or implement surrounding staff and recruitment and retention. And again, I just want to keep at the top of the forefront, my lens is focused on the $275,000, which is all that we have in our local budget, and the $3.6 million. The $3.6 million is really not in my purview for anything that is going to be recurring. Fund balance should not be utilized for recurring expenditures. An item that we know about that was troublesome and difficult this last school year with the state implemented additional supplement for certified staff is that because of that funding source, which was low wealth supplemental funding, pre-K was totally excluded and not eligible. An item for consideration is that we could offer that additional supplement to those pre-K staff in the upcoming school year. Based upon the caps that we were provided for the 22 school year, which was, it equated to a $495 additional supplement. Based upon that, for the pre-K staff that were not included, we're looking between $5,000 and $10,000 additional dollars that would need to come out of the $275,000 local budget, with the understanding that this could increase or decrease in upcoming years, dependent upon the governors or dependent upon our legislators. In regards to teacher supplements, to give some context around the supplements right now, 100% of those of any supplement that we provide our staff is funded locally. So our continuation budget included the impacts of the governor's bill for the increases that would have on the supplement. So that is in the $1.6 million. If we go further and increase those supplements additionally, that will be more funds that will be required from the local budget. To give you context, right now, our supplements for just our certified staff are approximately $4.2 million. That is not including the 4.2% average increase that was just legislated in the budget bill. So if we factor that into what we are currently paying, and it would equate to a little over $5 million of what we're going to be paying in local supplements. A 1% increase would equate to $500,000 to give you some context of the local teachers supplement. I think it's also important to just state that all of the salary increases that are in the budget bill, when your base compensation increases, the supplement is going to increase as well, because the supplement is a percentage of your base compensation. Another item that was asked for further discussion was master's pay surrounding certified positions, and what positions require master's pay and pay for it. And are there any positions that a master's degree is required for that the state does not provide funding for? So first of all, a master's degree is required for an assistant principal, our counselors, our psychologists, and our media specialists. Those positions require a master's degree, and the state does recognize that and does provide funding for those positions. Those that were grandfathered in 2013 when the legislation changed are also those who continue to receive master's pay. So all other positions that do not fall in these categories, if you have a master's degree, you will not receive master's pay for it. Next slide, please. To take this discussion a little further, I took a look at the staff that are the certified staff currently in Orange County schools that do not have a master or advanced degree. That is roughly 329 positions. Assuming that all of these positions, and I know this is a big if, but I don't know the number of those staff who actually have a master's degree, because staff have stopped putting it on their license, because if the state doesn't recognize it for the position and they know they're not going to receive pay for it, they don't put it on their license. So assuming that every staff member that doesn't currently have an advanced or master's degree did have an advanced or master's degree, that would equate to $2.7 million additional dollars for classroom teachers. And the reason this is higher than the number that you have heard previously, things to keep in mind: we have an average 4.2% increase that was just passed into legislation, and we are looking at all staff. Of the 2.7 million in classroom teachers, 340,000 is attributable to exceptional children teachers. 153,000 would be potential for our CTE teachers, and roughly 430,000 would be the potential for our program enhancement teachers. And your program enhancement teachers are your art, your music, your PE, and your world languages. Approximately 41,000 would be needed to pay social workers on the master's pay, and approximately 160,000 would be needed for our instructional facilitators that aren't currently being paid master's pay to be paid master's pay if they qualified. That sums the items that I had for discussion for you this evening, and look forward and now opening it up for any questions that you may have for me.
All right, Carrie.
Thanks, Will. Thank you, Ms. Rath. Just two quick questions on this last slide. The part about the 329 not paid master's or advanced degrees. is different from 329 that don't have master's degrees, right? So you're saying these are the ones not getting quote master's pay.
That is correct.
Okay.
To give a little more explanation, the only thing, the basis, my starting point was to look at everyone that is currently in our payroll and to factor out who is already receiving master's pay or advanced degree pay. And that is 300, then that leaves 329 certified staff that are not receiving master's or advanced pay.
Okay. And I have one other quick question on this slide, but let me know, Will, if you want me to.
No, go
pull
ahead,
back
please.
or.
Okay.
I just was going to mention, I know nurses, if they come in with master's degrees, they have to, you know, from the private sector, they have to wait a year or more before they can take the school nurse exam. So are they, and then they would be, get that higher pay bump from that. So would they be also considered here in this category?
Yes. And I
Okay.
believe I'm correct in saying that. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Bremer.
You are correct. If they have to have so many sitting hours before they can actually take the national school board exam. And so, yes, you are.
All right, Bonnie.
So I have several questions. I'll stick with this topic for a while. I'll go back to the other ones. We know the social workers that until about a year and a half ago were the master's was required. Is that, and we know for the teachers, the masters are not required. I wonder with the instructional facilitators, is a master's degree in the job description as required?
So it is not currently is preferred in the job description. However, that is a change we made, I think about a year and a half ago when all of this came up.
So you made, so kind of the same time we made it for the social workers, we made it for the instructional facilitators.
That is correct.
Okay. So we used to require masters for instructional facilitators. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Connie.
Sarah?
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Rath, for all of this. Really informative. It's helpful to know that we're going to be starting with a smaller fund balance this year than in the past, and that we have not very much wiggle room in what's left with the local increase. I think my question is, in that early slide where you have sort of the, you know, the thing in blue, the things you know that we need to spend money on, I saw it was estimated 500 for this new additional raises and benefits. That's a super round number. So I guess I was wondering like how solid that number is. Like, is that just where it happened to land, or is that sort of
that is an estimate, and that is I am pretty confident it will not be higher than $500,000.
Okay. And then I guess a similar thought question around the cost to change years of experience. I know Ms. Hatcher and Ms. Brimmer said that we are successfully recruiting more teachers who have more years of experience, which makes me wonder if that number might also end up costing us a little bit more.
That's a great point, and I think you're spot on. I do believe there is the potential. There was a little bit of that was factored into the 651,000, but you know, because we were hopeful that that would be the case, where we would be recruiting individuals who had more years of experience, and that was factored in. But there is a potential that that could be higher. Yes.
Okay. And then my last thing was, I was curious, it said that the federal reimbursements would be lower, and I was just curious why that was.
So districts are no longer being held harmless. And we also will not be receiving reimbursement for every meal that is served. We will only be receiving, Patrick, I'm gonna look to you to jump in if I'm hose this up, but last year, we were able to give every student a meal and we were reimbursed for that. That is not going to be the case in this upcoming school year. We will only be reimbursed for those students who qualify. Is that correct, Patrick?
It is, and we're working on communication to go out to families to stress the importance again of this change and the process to complete meal applications.
Great. I just got an email from my kid's school that had something about that. So the word is starting to get out. Thank you. So the hold harmless piece, just to follow up on this point, the hold harmless piece in ADM, has that not been factored into what we expect to have? How does that fit in here, Ms. Rath, with the slide before this one here?
So when we were projecting the budget, we were basing it on that we would not be held harmless. So that is factored into our budget. And one of the impacts of that, as you heard when Ms. Hatcher opened up her presentation, she was talking about what the schools have been allotted. So as a result of districts not being held harmless for this upcoming school year, based upon our projected enrollment, the state reduced us 9 teaching positions right away because our numbers decreased from the 2018-19 year, because we were held harmless throughout the COVID. So as a result, when they look at the decrease from that last time that we weren't held harmless, we have had 9 teaching positions that were taking back at the state. So those 9 teaching positions were taken because our enrollment decreased, and we allotted our schools based upon their enrollment.
Okay. Okay. So that's already accounted for in the allotments. Okay.
It is already accounted for.
Awesome. Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, Bonnie?
Yeah, so I have a couple of questions. First, I'm back on the fund balance. Last year, we were running a fairly large balance and called lapsed salaries, was a surplus. And I was curious where that ended up and where that shows in the fund balance.
Lapsed salaries do not roll into fund balance until the end of the year. And so basically we had lapsed salaries, but we also had other initiatives that we were implementing where we were spending those funds in different areas. And therefore, as a result, we will not, those lapsed salaries did not exceed what we were spending to allow us to be able to put some back in fund balance.
Okay, so what you're saying is that, because I remember at one point we had like $3 million in lapsed salaries, but you're saying other expenses encroached on that and ate it up before, so we ended up not without a surplus at all.
That is correct.
So we don't keep them separate. So we don't look at that surplus separately from the expenses. So it would be interesting to know what all these expenses were. When with the fuel expenses, are we going to get reimbursed for that? Will the federal government reimburse us for the higher fuel costs, or is that on us?
Right now, we have no indication that we're going to receive any supplement to get higher fuel reimbursement.
Okay, and we do have other budget pressures that we've talked about. I'm thinking particularly we talked about raising the pay for the family liaisons, and we talked about adding a couple of, I think we're going to add a facilitator. There were a couple other positions we were adding. So are those not in here? So are those gone?
No, they're already accounted for from, unless I'm operating in a misunderstanding. I thought those items had already been approved by the board. So as a result, they are already accounted for in the budget.
Okay, I didn't know they'd been approved, but okay. And then finally, the 500,000 in additional spending. Do we have the opportunity to go to the county commissioners and ask them if they will fund that? I know they were aware it could come. They didn't have a number, but now we have a number.
I believe that would be your decision. If I may be,
Sure, that's
you
fine.
know, frank, I think that's the decision of the board. You know, from my lens, I've presented you with the information that they funded us our continuation budget, and they provided us enough funding for the additional anticipated expenses associated with the final budget bill.
Okay. And open positions, all the, like these, however many, 50 something open teachers and stuff, that's all in the budget, even though the positions are not filled. They're all.
That's
budgeted.
right. They're part of the continuation budget.
All right.
The salary is held in the continuation budget.
Okay, Andre?
Yes, just a couple of quick questions. Are we and have we ever reached out to the town of Hillsborough to try to get funding? I know we reach out to the county commissioners on a number of occasions, but I'm quite sure the town of Hillsborough receives a lot of funding from us. Have we ever reached out to them? And I was going to ask the same question Bonnie had as far as our open positions. What about the positions as far as the district level positions? Are they all added as well, Ms. Rath?
So yes, thank you for that question. I may have to look to Eva to help me out with the legalities around town municipalities and funding for school districts. In regards to positions, so the positions are vacant now, but they were occupied at some point in time throughout the fiscal year. And so those salaries are captured and held in our continuation budget. So the continuation budget accounts for the positions that are vacant. But it also accounts for, let me just go a little further and say, the 9 positions that we had to reduce, the 9 classroom teaching positions that we had to reduce as a result of our state funding being cut. Was that helpful, Mr. Richmond?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Eva, I'm not sure of the parameters around if we could reach out to the town of Hillsborough and what their obligation is to fund school districts.
The town does not have any obligation to fill school districts or to fund the school district. Towns have the ability to create a special tax for schools. As you know, that is what Chapel Hill has done. So to date, I think that's the avenue generally is the supplemental school tax. But no, in general, municipalities don't have the obligation to fund schools. That by law in North Carolina falls to the local education agency, meaning the county or the school district, and then the state. And so for the most part, the state funds employees. It's the differences here are obviously because we have employees who are above what we are allotted by the state. And so we fund those locally, as do most counties.
Right, other questions? So Rhonda, I have a couple of questions. I'll step in since there's no active board questions. What is the percentage that we're required by county level government to maintain for unallocated on the fund balance?
5.5% of your local budget.
So that means since they've increased it to the 38.5, that we're going to have a higher bar than we had last year, right?
That is correct.
So about 2.2 or 2.1 million is about
Yes,
what we need.
yes, yes.
And I just want to point out, based on the numbers you've showed us, the unappropriations is 1.2 million right now. Like that's what we're projecting based on, I don't know what slide number it was. It's where you're showing the unspent appropriations carryover fund balance.
Next slide, Ryan, if you don't mind.
Yes, this one. So is the 1.2 the unallocated? Or is that just the carryover?
That's just the carryover. That
Okay.
is only the carryover. The 3.7 million is what is being projected as fund balance that is available for appropriation. There will be roughly around 100,000 that we have to hold aside for what they call state stabilization. But other than that, that 3.7 million is what the board, I am projecting that the board will have available to appropriate.
And on the budget concerns, I guess one slide down, that does not include the 360, the 200, and then the fuel.
That is correct. That those items are not factored in because those are items that are anticipated at this point in time, but are not realized.
Okay, and the custodians are going through an RFP process right now, aren't they?
That is
So
correct.
we'll know hopefully what that will be at some point, but still we have at least like 560,000 of potential plus the fuel cost that's double that we want. I mean, that's, you're saying per week, right?
Yes.
Wow, so that's pretty significant hit for the whole year. Wow. Do we have an estimated fuel cost for the year? Like what that works out to be? Because
So, Mr. Atherton, I mean, we base it on 36 weeks of the school year. So that's the calculation. I will say the number was much higher. We were projecting $75,000 a week. The reason it's down to 60 is because we are seeing the drop in fuel cost right now. And looking at the state contract, that's our best estimate of where we'll be opening school. And keep in mind, fuel costs is not just the yellow school buses, it's all fuel costs. So that includes athletic travel, local maintenance vehicles, fuel, any fuel costs. And those, the only state funding we receive is for the yellow school buses. So any of those increase in cost and fuel costs for local use, that's a cost increase locally. There is no reimbursement for that. I know the question came up about reimbursement for fuel, but the state provides funding for the yellow school buses only. And so this cost is shared between Orange County Schools and Chapel Hill because we also provide the fuel for the state bus fleet in both districts as required by law.
okay, so the back of the envelope is about $1 million.
I was going to tell you that, yeah.
Okay, wow. I mean, that's $1 million plus 560,000 towards, our 3.6. That's quite a bit. So I'll stop there and let others ask. I saw Sarah, you had your hand up.
Yeah, no, I was just going to build on that point. I mean, if you take that plus the 5.5% we're supposed to hold in fund balance, that's essentially the fund balance, right? So very, very little wiggle room, and hopefully fuel costs come down. This total cost of $1 million in fuel, roughly in fuel, if this price continues all year, would we only pay part of that because Chapel Hill would pay part of that?
So the way the funding works out, we do get reimbursement from Chapel Hill for the fuel cost, but it's still an increase to our share is what we So when we went back and
Sure.
asked for an appropriation, that's to cover our share of the anticipated fuel costs. So this is what we're anticipating,
Our share to be, this is what we expect our share to be.
Correct.
Okay, yeah, so that's, I mean, that's what our fund balance is this year, I guess. Mhm.
And the other issue is, as we look at our fleet management, I mean, we're doing everything we can to reduce, idling for sure, combining routes, combining bus stops, all the things we can do to be more efficient in our bus routing. And, that's something as we start the school year, we can bring back to the board about, a monthly report or a quarterly report on how we're doing with our fuel costs next year and keep a closer eye on it. Because I know we all were quite shocked with the $5 and something per gallon that we were paying at the end of the year compared to normally paying, $2 to $3 for a gallon of diesel on state contract.
Yeah, this is this is really looking stressful based on what we have and that 275 to play with. It doesn't look like we have that to play with based on what we're seeing, but Bonnie, you're in mute. There you go.
I want to say the same thing. I mean, I came into this meeting thinking that we had money to work with. I had a little bit of a different vision of how many things we'd already approved. So we've approved some things I didn't realize, so I feel good about that. But money's really tight. Money's crazy tight. And so that's all. And it's not a consulting, it's not about a consulting study.
I was just going to add that because, these projections are based upon anticipated expenses that we have not seen yet, as these start to materialize, and I will just keep you apprised of where our actual spending is at to give you visibility of how that fund balance can potentially or may potentially change.
And Ms. Rath, while we don't have a sub-bullet under utility costs, I know that was discussed. Can you give the board some ballpark range in terms of percentage that we anticipate?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Felder. We're anticipating roughly 3 to 5% cost increase in that line item. And I was going to quickly pull a number of what our utility costs run the district.
I do see your hand up, Andre. As soon as Ms. Rath gives that, we'll go to you.
Sorry, I'm having a little technical difficulty here, so please bear with me. Sometimes my Starlink doesn't work like it's supposed to. And these spreadsheets are loading, so maybe I can go ahead and take Andre's question while we're waiting for this to load.
Yes, ma'am. So going back to the district level positions, and I'm unsure how many vacancies we have there. Are we able to look at those positions and possibly put a hold on some of those positions or those positions altogether to try to save some money and take a look at them case by case basis?
A good question, Mr. Richmond. And one of the things that I, do have for talking points are some areas that we could potentially look at cutting to generate more budget. Every department has been tasked with identifying 10% of their budget to be able to cut for the upcoming fiscal year, but please keep in mind that that 10% will only materialize us between $80,000 and $100,000 because the largest portion of our budget is in people. Our people and our associated benefit costs for those people, as well as our local supplement. Some other items that could potentially be considered is, and I'll get back to your position question as I go through these. And I also want to give human capital an opportunity. I am not sure how many vacancies we have at the district level right now. And maybe by the time we get to that discussion, we will be able to identify that.
Ms. Rath,
Yes.
and I did not mean to interrupt. I do not have that at my fingertips right now. I could pull that information, but I don't have it right now.
Okay.
I was solely focused on teachers tonight, but Mr. Richmond, I can get that information to you tomorrow. And we can provide you with an answer.
Yes, ma'am, that's no problem.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hatcher.
You're welcome.
We also have talked about no out-of-district travel reimbursement, where we would not reimburse employees for travel outside of the district. We also are tasked and are looking internally at individual departments, and where we see budget excesses, we will recommend budget cuts. Where appropriate, an option would be to freeze central office vacancies for 90 days. That has been a practice that has been utilized previously. But, I would like to stress where appropriate, because that could be detrimental to the operations of the district being able to continue dependent upon the position. Another item, we also could look at middle school after school and look at that program and consider charging parents for their students to attend that program. Right now, that program is free, and we pay the staff to man that program 100% from our local budget, and it's roughly around $130,000 to $150,000 in the local budget that supports the middle school after school staff. And we already, Ms. Hatcher was able, I see she has her hand up. I didn't know if you would like to add anything.
We have 9 district positions, Ms. Rath.
9 district positions that are currently vacant.
And Mr. Richmond, I'm having computer problems here with 2 screens. I can give a breakdown tomorrow, but I do know it's 9.
And those are licensed positions,
Yes.
not necessarily classified.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Ms. Hatcher and Ms. Brim.
You're welcome.
Were you able to get the utility costs?
Yes, our utility costs for the district for a year are roughly $2.3 million. So anticipating about a 3% increase, we're looking around 60 to 70,000.
All right, Bonnie,
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. So Connie, you said it was there 7 licensed open positions and some additional?
I heard 9.
9, sorry,
Ms.
9
Hatcher said
licensed.
9, Ms. Hauser.
Got it, 9 licensed and then some number of classified positions. So the administrative positions and others. Those were-
Yes, there are
Yes.
9
Positions.
licensed vacancies. That does not include our certified staff. I will say some of those are district level teaching positions, and not necessarily at the central office level, but there are 9.
Got it. That's helpful. And then what about we've noticed there's this private security firm that we've hired. that have been showing up at meetings, and, this is new to us. We, I know the board hasn't seen anything or talked about anything. So just curious how much that's costing us and how we're paying for that.
Sure. And Mr. Obley, I'll let you chime in if I miss it here. The contract for that private security is roughly $20,000, and that is being funded from the operations budget.
And it's not just board meetings. It's we use them for the polling day when we had extra guards in the polling locations for school safety while schools were open in May for the primaries. Because law enforcement can't take an active role at a polling location, we had additional security on campus. Is that events besides board meetings without a criminal act that's taken place, through the discussion of the ordinance and other things that happen on or off campuses. Law enforcement can't take on administrative duties. So without having staff constantly confronting the public, as has been the norm the last year or so with mandates and et cetera, the private security has been utilized to assist administration with peaceful and orderly meetings.
Do we expect to continue that, or are we pretty well finished with that?
There's no staff that I think are trained and have the experience to engage groups on campuses. And I think part of our security plan we can talk about would be, is this necessary? But I think that would save that for closed session.
Okay.
Sarah?
Yeah, just to clarify, so staff are not necessarily asking for any particular budget actions today, right? This was information and just to get a sense of where we stand at this point. Is that right?
That is correct, Ms. Smiley.
But
Yeah.
we've sort of laid out a number of different options if we need to moving forward. Okay.
I have to say personally, I'm very concerned right now seeing the utilities. Rhonda, does the utilities include the water as well?
It does.
Okay. I mean, just all of these together, we know that we won't have enough money. I mean, if all these become true, and I know Rhonda, you will keep us on the straight and narrow where we are with this, but I don't see how we could, originally, Sarah, some of this was to talk about what we had left over from the county, and could we help potentially with hiring or anything else. And I mean, after seeing this, I don't see how we could, personally, I don't see how we could do that based on what we know right this moment, but that was kind of the intent.
Yeah, there's not a lot of wiggle room. Thanks.
And this might be a good topic for the retreat, so to further discuss. Bonnie?
Yeah, I actually have a couple of things. One is to Andre's point. I'd like to, we've got some things to work out. I'd like us, the board, to go to the commissioners and see if they'll give us some more money, given the state increases. And maybe we'll see if they'll give us 500,000. I'd like to see if that door, if we can open that door until we know. I do think we should freeze central office positions. What did Rhonda say, 90 days was customary for us to do? I think that feels like a good idea until we have had a chance to really go through all this. So that would be two different motions. One is the board goes to the commissioners. Is that a motion, or do we just do that? And I'd like to.
Are you asking or stating?
Well, I'm asking. I don't know if I need to make a motion, or if we should just do, if that's something we just kind of do.
So I see Felder's hand is raised. So Dr. Felder.
I bet you're not surprised. So I would, going back to Mr. Abington's point, I think we should discuss this further, perhaps at the retreat, We also need more clarification from Ms. Hatcher with regards to how many positions fall in what category. To Ms. Brimmer's point, we know that some of these positions are teaching positions, so we need clarity there. I would recommend that we not take any action tonight, come back and discuss it further before taking action. We have a retreat on the 5th and the 6th, which is right around the corner. Thank you.
Sarah?
I'd appreciate the chance to talk about it more. Some of those central office positions, there's like a floating nurse in there. I mean, there's, before we make any big moves on that. On the county commissioner piece, I am just really doubtful that they would increase, given that we have enough money in what they gave us to handle the additional state raises. So I'm curious, Bonnie, like, what would your case be? Like, if I were a commissioner, I'd just be like, what's the problem? You have the money in what we gave you, so how would you frame it?
Well, I remember when we met with them, they knew that this was coming. They knew it was an undetermined amount. Now they know it's more than we had asked for on the budget. So the case is this was an unexpected expense that came our way. And so, what we know that the commissioners were fairly close to giving us additional funds. So there is no cost to asking, right? And it certainly is a change. It is a change in the assumptions that we built our budget around. That's the basis.
I just want to inject too, Sarah, we could go in with these budget concerns and identify these as items that have cropped up and they'll be ongoing, just as a thought too. Carrie?
Yeah, the other item that struck me as something to bring to the commissioners is the increase in fuel expenses.
Yep.
So just to add in on that.
Great. I see Bonnie and Sarah, you still have your hands up. Do you all still have more?
No.
I meant to lower mine, but it just occurred to me. We did already start speaking to them about additional nursing support for the larger campuses. And so, if we were to go back to them, I suppose we could combine that with this too.
All right. Any other discussion items? We will bring this into the retreat discussion to see what options we have and approaches to this. All right. Well, with that, thank you, Ms. Rath, and everyone else that's helped with this discussion. Our next item is a review of the facilities rental fee schedule.
All right, I think I'm gonna share my screen. They're updating here, so let me. All right, can you see that now, board members?
Yes.
All right, so we wanted to review the Board of Education facility usage and fees. And just to kind of recap, what has taken place in reference to the facility rental agreements and the fees. We were closed for the greater part of the year and a half for most rentals in our schools due to COVID. This past spring, we talked about, as conditions improved, opening up the facility application process starting on July 1st. We did have several applications that came in from recurring groups that had used the facilities previously for start of facility rentals in July and in August during the summer months. We also reviewed and updated with the policy committee, policy 5030, facility usage. And as part of that process each year prior to July 1st, the superintendent recommends facility fees and facility fee schedule. And we updated those as well following the feedback of the committee and the presentation of our current rates compared to the old rates in surrounding districts. So on June 27th, The board approved the new facility fee schedule. You put a implementation start date of that on August 15th for any of the rental applications that we had received prior to that board meeting on June 27th, and that those entities who had approved applications for the summer to charge them on the old rate, all new applications coming in would be charged the new rate, as was stated in the policy recommend, or the board action recommended that night. So we were asked to bring this item back before you. I just wanted to start with the last action of the board, give the board an opportunity to discuss that action and a process moving forward. I know you do have one request before you to review facility rentals based on the timing of what was previously charged to the group and the notifications that they received this spring with the increase in the cost as applied by the policy. I've provided you an analysis of their cost associated to the old fee schedule, and that is based on the policy, and it's based on the hours and the time that's utilized within a facility rental agreement for that group. I've got one other item I want to share with you, and I do want to just point this out for the board. Can you see my screen that has the policy here? Okay. And so this is the policy 5030. And what I wanted to point the board to is exceptions to the standard facility use categories and process. Again, we charge users based on the category that they fall into within policy. Again, the way we've changed the policy to be much cleaner and easier is if it's a school affiliated group, PTA, PTOs, organizations that are truly serving the students, and that's the exclusive purpose. And that usage of the facility is to support our programming and our students. There's no facility fees that are charged with that. We do have a category for other nonprofits based on meeting the 501(c) charity organization by the federal government. And then we have for-profit rates. So we have made sure that we were clear about the school affiliated groups. But I wanted to point out the one exception here is noted in policy, and this states the Board of Education may enter into other facility use agreements for a period of less than 10 years on terms and conditions it deems wise, provided that the board identifies a specific benefit to the school system in entering into such an agreement, and the benefit outweighs the costs or disadvantages to the school districts. And so the board does have flexibility to enter in the MOU process with the memorandum of understanding and agreement with an organization. And I know the one you're going to talk about this evening, there has been a lot of comments by the board and at board meetings the last several months about the community group and the benefits to the community. Although there are some students who may participate in it, it's not an exclusive group by policy that is designed to serve students in the schools. Although we think looking at the opportunities going forward, that may be able to be expanded upon, that would allow, if they're putting on a production in the summertime that's student and kid related, maybe we would be able to take our students on a field trip who are in school during the summer months to watch the player performance at no cost, et cetera. So that's why, that exception within the MOU allows the board to set the terms and the agreements for that. So I'll stop there. Again, just wanted to give a little bit of background to the previous board action, and then just point out to the board that you do have the ability for the MOU process for an entity you deem does serve to be a wise decision.
All right. Thank you, Patrick. Questions from board members? All right, Bonnie?
So first, Patrick, I wanted to thank you for doing that analysis for us, because I think we all at the end of when at the last meeting, we assumed it was the fee change that drove the cost up, and it was not the change, it was the way we applied the fees or didn't. So I really appreciated that. I like the MOU idea a lot, especially for Orange County community players because of their they have students in the company, they have teachers and staff in the company. It's always been like that. I believe we benefit from a closer relationship with our drama departments, our music departments, to get our kids in their production, get more kids in their production. And it takes our production, it takes our students to a higher level of production. So instead of just being in a school production, they're now in a community production that people are paying to go see. I, by the way, bought my tickets for the production. Is it possible to put the MOU in place with Orange community players now for this year?
I'll let Eva maybe assist with that, but I don't know that there's a timeline that specifies when the MOU. I think the intent behind what I read was it gives the board flexibility to be off schedule based on policy.
That's right. Yeah, there's no specific time deadline, although I gather their use is coming up soon.
Yes.
The only issue is that it takes two parties to do an MOU. We will do this for you, give you a partial fee waiver, and then you will do what, involve students or whatever the in-kind trade-off is. And so we don't know what OCP is interested in, I think, as of today, but there's no reason you couldn't if there's a meeting of the minds there.
All right, Sarah?
Yeah, my question is just sort of in a different direction. Patrick, were you able to figure out what, so they've been undercharged, right, for years because they were misclassified. So how did that happen, and how are we making sure that that doesn't happen? Because there are real costs associated, right, with renting out the facilities.
I think there was a little bit of confusion in policy, which is why we changed the language in policy and on how the groups were specified and what the rates were and the fee reductions were for each of the groups. So I think clarifying the policy categories helps. And sometimes, based on the old categories, if there was a person, whether they were an employee or a student, then it was considered to be school sponsored, which may not necessarily be true based on the intent of the policy. And so I can't speak to the billing because I wasn't involved in the direct billing with our division taking on facility rentals this year and reviewing the policy and the analysis we did. Those were the charges that we calculated based on the old fee schedule. And, I think one of the confusing items was, I heard someone say, well, we only pay custodial fees. There was never an item on the fee schedule or in policy that said only pay custodial fees. It said pay these fees or these fees. And, the principal has the authority to waive, some personnel, but there was never, I could find anything in policy that said we'll only pay, this part of it. It was listed as a category with the charges. The other item in policy, it discussed and talked about after hour usage for utility fees. So, again, as I explained to the group a couple months ago, if we already have the building open because they're in section B and we have something going on in section A and we already have the personnel there and we're already running the lights, et cetera, then we don't turn around and charge a group for those utility fees. And so understanding, the usage, the space, but there are times when like weekends and nights where these groups are the only ones using the building and therefore otherwise the meters wouldn't be running toilets wouldn't be flushed, paper towels, cost wouldn't be occurred. So, it's understanding a truer cost of the buildings as well, all those things I just mentioned. And rather than billing individuals for utilities and cost of paper towels and soap and this, and we just simplified it and said, if you rent the space, we assume folks are going to go to the bathroom. We know that we're going to have custodians there. The major difference in policies is the requirement to have safety and security plans, and to have, if someone's having an event that has a large number of members of the community present, then we have law enforcement or we have security in present. We can't just turn the building over to them and say, it's your building. And, we know by the MOU or the user agreement, they have liability insurance to cover their entity on those certificates of insurance, but we also need to make sure we have a plan in place if something were to happen while the building was being used. Fire alarm goes off, there's weather events or other issues that may occur, that we're able rapidly to respond to that as building owners.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'll just say, I don't think that the categories of groups before was terribly unclear. Like, I know we've simplified it, but to me, even just looking at the old categories, it seems pretty clear that they'd be classified as a 501c3. So whatever internal controls we have on like making sure that those categorizations are appropriate, I think makes sense.
All right, thanks, Sarah. Carrie?
Thanks, Will. Yeah, so I appreciate also Patrick's analysis that, and as Bonnie mentioned, this group's jump from roughly 2,000 to 7,000 if we were to charge the new fees, which we've already voted on not doing for this year, that it really wasn't the specific fee changes, but that they were undercharged last year. So for example, in your summary, Patrick, it mentioned they didn't pay any rental fees for space, use of supplies, equipment, lights, sound, utilities, etc. I personally have a hard time paying all those fees for an outside group going forward, as we're talking about expenses of those very things tonight and how difficult it is to cover them. And I mean, going forward, I think this, when you talk of the spirit of the law and the letter of the law, the letter of the law of what we voted in June was implementing the new fee schedule on August 15th. But I think the spirit of what we were trying to vote for is not shocking a longstanding group in terms of what they have to pay this summer. So I'm supportive of, capping their costs or something this summer, but I think it really needs to be noted, we're a school district covering utility and cleaning and all these other fees for things outside the purpose of our school district. And I'm not ready to, update a memorandum for years going forward to do that tonight.
Patrick?
Yeah, I was just going to add, thank you for that. And when we talk about facility usage, lights that burn out or go bad in gymnasiums or auditoriums, it's a very expensive endeavor to rent lifts and to put individuals in the air in order to rent bulbs that cost several $100s. We're not talking a 78-cent LED bulb or an incandescent light bulb. These are very expensive theater lights or gymnasium lights. And the process of upkeep on the facility is a little more extensive in these spaces.
So let's see, Dr. Felder and then Bonnie.
Thank you, Mr. Atherton. I just have a wondering, and Patrick, I don't know if you know the answer to this question. I just wonder, are there any other groups that are out there that perhaps fall into the same category in terms of fees that were charged previously that may approach the district seeking the same arrangement for this year?
There are two, Dr. Felder, that I would know of. One would be a longstanding church group that's used one of our buildings and facilities. they also would be experiencing a large jump in the rental fee rates on the new schedule. And then the second one was the group that used the gymnasium at the Welcome Center. They also would experience an increase in cost with the new schedule. And they're currently not, as far as summer usage, the gymnasium's not being occupied because we had to take the gymnasium back over in order to do the online testing for the online academy. And then we've been using it for distribution and warehousing right now. So they're not using it this summer.
Thank you.
All right, Sarah?
Just a clarity on that. Those two groups, they're not being classified as school groups, right? So they're experiencing the increase in the fees, which we've discussed about, like the fees haven't been increased in many years. We need to charge our actual expenses. So those groups are going to experience an increase because of those things, but not because they've been misclassified and sort of undercharged.
That's correct. I mean, they simply are, they're not school related, and there is no question about an in-kind or other associated application of policy. It strictly is new fees being implemented.
Okay, so that feels different to me. And I agree with Carrie's point about, I think the spirit of what we intended in saying, let's charge this year's fee and not have this, was to not surprise them with this big increase right as they were about to do their production. And so I'd be supportive of, not making that big jump in fees for this year. And then they have some warning for next year. Yeah.
All right, Bonnie?
Yeah, I want to support that, Sarah. I don't know about next year, but certainly if we just keep the fees for right now and then figure out what we want to do long-term with Orange Community Players. I do have a question about the church. Other than Crosslinks, who have gone, they've been gone for some time, is there another church that's using our facilities?
We do have one, and then we've received a second request over the last week to use the one of our auditoriums as well.
Okay. So that's different. That's one that, yeah, okay. I'll let Eva go and then.
All right, Eva?
I just want to make a quick procedural note. I think that the vehicle for an exception, looking at your policy, would be, aside from the MOU option, would be a vote to waive policy for this group, which is fine. It does require 2/3.
Thanks, Eva. So I do have a couple of questions, Patrick, if you could help. So we installed the geothermal in the Orange High School facility, and part of geothermal is it continuously runs, right? So are you saying that gets cut off when nobody's in the building?
No, it doesn't get cut off. I mean, it runs on different schedules and it has a different process that we utilize. And obviously with COVID, we really can't get a better estimate of our utility cost and cost savings. So, and I know what you're discussing. So like at Orange High School, the auditorium's embedded within the main building of the school. It's not separate metered, but like at Orange Middle School, it is. It's a totally separate meter that we run off of the building. So I don't know I can answer tonight. We would just have to dive into the geothermal utility cost.
Yeah, I just knew that one of the cost savings the district did before I joined the board was to put that in. And when we did a little learning on it, we went out to Orange County's building, and they told us that it continuously ran. It's just how it works. If you shut it off, you could have different flow problems, and the whole purpose is to equalize from the ground to there. And so I know there's some of that, but all right. And I think that was one question, but the other one is, it sounds like the board has consensus on doing a waiver for this year around the fees, so they're not surprised. Is that, do we have a motion around that?
Would you mind just repeating that? I apologize. I missed.
Based on what Eva said, we would need to do a motion to waive policy and to charge players the same amount they were charged last year for this year.
I'll move that.
All right, do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, thanks, Andre. Okay, any discussion? Oh, Carrie, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm glitching a little bit, so I'm gonna turn off my camera. Can we have some sort of exception that if we end up having to replace items, that we do last year's, but if that didn't include, replacing several $100 light bulbs or things of that nature, that those costs get covered?
So are we saying someone from staff would go in and do an inventory and then an inventory at the end?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm suggesting, if that seems doable to Mr. Abele.
Patrick, sorry.
Thank you. I think it would be, if a bulb burns out, it's going to be hard to know usage life at this point. I will say all of our facility rental agreements, and that's why we have the certificate of insurance and the way the agreement is, if there's any damages, let's say they leave the lights on, they instead of shutting everything off at 11 p.m. when they vacate, they left everything on and it stayed running all weekend long and bulbs burned out. Then I believe according to our current application, we would be able to charge them based on damage to the facility. So if there is a misuse or if there's an abuse or damages, I believe that's already covered by the process for that.
Thank you for the clarity, Patrick. All right, any other discussion? All right, Andre?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Okay. Carrie?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
Dr. Moore?
Yes.
And chair votes yes. All right, motion carries. All right, thank you, everybody, for a good discussion around that. I think we have one other question. Is there, Dr. Felder or board members, any reason for closed session?
Not that I'm aware of, Mr. Atherton.
All right, board members, is there something, or Eva, anything on your side as well?
I don't have anything.
Okay, thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay. Bonnie and Bonnie with the motion, and second was Sarah. Okay, Sarah,
Yes.
right? Ann,
Yes.
Carrie,
Yes.
Bonnie,
Yes.
Dr. Moore,
Yes.
Andre.
Yes.
Okay, and chair votes yes. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate everybody's time. Thank you, Dr. Felder and staff, for facilitating the special meeting tonight. Everybody have a great night. With that, we
You the
adjourn.
same. Good night.
Thank you.